Welcome to the 2020 Linn County Virtual Fair 4-H FFA Meat and AOB Goat Show.
And the first division is market meat goats, and the first class is market meat goats with dairy breed influence. And this is entry 568.
We've got this goat here that is one that's tall-shouldered, long and extended from the side. One that appears to have some shape down his top, and one that we really appreciate the robustness of his build, and one that really appreciate in terms of being shallow in that chest floor. You know, if we were to get critical on this one, we'd just like to relax this one in terms of the set to its hock. It's a little excessive in that set there, but one that really appreciate the build from the side and the muscularity. Yeah, and as we study this one in motion, maybe not the most cooperative today, but still a lot of the similarities that we saw in the pictures. One that is long and extended, tall-shouldered, has some muscularity. We just need to, you know, bring that one's hock set back just a little bit to make it more correct there.
This is entry 711.
This one here, again, one that we appreciate in terms of build, in terms of his feet and legs there. One that has some power right behind his shoulder, as we can see in that rear view. Some width and dimension through that front 1/3. For me, this one gets a little pointed and out in that shoulder blade, not quite as smooth and tall shouldered. One that maybe gets a little steeper out of that hip as well. Yeah, again, this one, you know, like we mentioned, really good on in the angles on the feet and legs there, and just you know, we'd like to give this one a little square, a little more squareness out of its hip, and maybe make that shoulder blade just a notch shorter to make it more attractive.
This is entry 1101.
This one here seems to be really nice balanced, one that's good on its feet and legs, one goat that really ties high out of the top side of its shoulder, its neck there, one that we really appreciate the build, and this one has just maybe not quite as far along in its age and maturity, so maybe just not quite as muscular and wide skeleton. And as we could suspect based on the pictures, I think the video matches this one really well in terms of, being good on its feet and legs, being balanced and collected in its skeleton and smooth built. Just, would like to see this one wider skeleton and a little further along in its maturity.
And entry 1103.
Yeah, this one here, when we start to study this one and its foundation, the feet and legs set there is close to ideal in terms of the angles of its lower joints. This goat here is one that has some body and dimension, has some width through that chest. For me, just gets a little bit plainer through the front 1/3, not quite as attractive there, and maybe just a little steeper out of that hip. And again, we can see the feet and legs set in this one, and the correctness this one has on his feet and legs, the productive build through that chest and rib. Maybe comes to a little bit of a detriment just being a little bit wider through that chest and rib, maybe not quite as attractive through that front 1/3. But one that we really appreciate in terms of the feet and leg and that roundness of rib.
So this is all 4 entries from the first class. On the next slide, it is all 4 videos if you'd like me to play those first.
Yeah, if you could play the videos first, please. All right, as we evaluate this class, for me, the class winner is going to be 568 Blue Ribbon. That one there is awfully good in terms of being good built in terms of its rib design, tall shouldered, smooth shouldered, really clean through that front 1/3, still having some muscle shape and dimension, and with the skeleton, square out of that hip. Yes, when we put this one into motion, we'd like to see uh, a, a better hock set in this one, handle its hind leg just a notch better. But I think the other parts and pieces this one has, it makes this one awfully good. And then for me, the next one, 1101, blue ribbon, I think most closely follows our class winner in terms of type and kind, being really attractive through that front end, attractive when we set that one into motion. Just what puts that one into the second spot, just not quite as far along in its maturity, just not quite as far along in its overall dimension and robustness. Then for me, the 7-11 goat will be another will be a red ribbon. That one there we talked about having a good feet and leg set, correct in the angles of its skeleton. Still handles itself well on the move. Just some slight concerns in terms of just not as attractive through that front end. A little bit longer and more pointed in that shoulder blade. We just like to level out of that hip a little bit. But one in terms of feet and legs and taking the lead and handling herself, we really like that one quite a bit. The next one would be 1103, red ribbon. This one here we really like in terms of the way this one sets them down, sets them square and in the correct places. We talked about how wide-chested this one was and robust in that rib cage. But for me, just the front 1/3 and that hip, and just when we set this one into motion, just not quite as smooth and tall fronted, just not quite as long and level out of that hip.
Okay, we are now into the AOB goats. And this class is does over 12 months of age, commercial or registered. And this is entry 440.
This doe here is one that, as we can see from the front and rear pictures, is really pulled apart in its skeleton, wide based, really solid on her foundation, just massive through that chest and forerib. One that appears to be big top. It's harder to see, but just in the rear view. Or excuse me, the side view, just, the way that leg set is, I would anticipate this one gets a little softer in its pasterns, maybe not quite as sturdy there, but one that we appreciate the robustness and wide skeleton build of this one. Yeah, and as we watch this one in motion, the one unique thing about this one is that one, the way this one handles herself on the move, just being so wide built and powerfully built, is comes out high at the point of her shoulder, still stays square when she plants them down. She doesn't push out or push in on her joints. She stays square and gives us a really neat view. Again, kind of the main concern there is she does get a little soft in those pasterns, but one that I think has a lot of good. And this one, single entry, would be a blue ribbon.
These are, on the left are the class winners, and then across the top is first, second, and third from that first class.
Yep. Okay.
So we're looking for champion and reserve champion.
Okay. Yeah, as we start to evaluate these individuals for champion and reserve, we've talked quite a bit about both our class winners in the particular divisions quite a bit. We talked about the pygmy goat there, the 12 months and older doe division, one that we liked a ton in terms of her quality of being wide built and just massive over her top and handling herself still really well on the move with that much mass and dimension, and being tall at the point of her shoulder, and having that neck come out of the highest point of her shoulder. We did have some concerns in terms of her pattern set, but I think all those things said a really solid entry out of that division. And then as we evaluated the market goats dairy breed influence division, the class winner there, we talked about one that is really attractive in terms of that front 1/3 out of that hip, and being having some base width and dimension, just a little concerning in terms of that hind leg set there. So as we start to evaluate and think about our champion and reserve, for me, the entry 440, the pygmy goat entry there will be your champion. Just all the positives and extremes that this one goes to in terms of width, and still being appropriate in his inner skeleton. I think is a nice champion for us there. And then with that, your reserve will be entry 568. Just a really complete, attractive profile, and one that still has some dimension and mass to her.
We would like to thank our judge, our 4-H and FFA exhibitors, their families, our volunteers, our staff, and our 2020 4-H Fair recognition and trophy donors. Thank you for watching.